All right, here we go. Ready for some Jesus? Yeah, all right, here we go. So we're talking about influencers. Actually, I gotta check my email for a second. Hold on. This is important for later. I need to see where it stops. Okay. Norwegian Cruise Lines is trying to get a hold of me. All right. It's true. It's right. It's in there. Oh, well, yeah. No, I want to be here with you. All right. So we're talking about influencers, and we're wondering, what are the things that we may or may not have that really crack a dent in today's culture? What is it that makes impact that we may be weak in? Or maybe we're strong, and that's awesome too. But what is it that really matters? Well, there's all kinds of things that matter, and I'm just picking on a few. And so these next couple of weeks, I'm gonna cinch this thing up. Today, I'm gonna speak to something that speaks in a word that actually words can't. And it's generosity. Generosity. All right? Now, before you go into shutdown mode, because you're like, okay, pastor's talking about money. Everybody knows churches run on money, so church must be low on money. Stop. Just stop. This is about you, and this is you influencing, and this is about culture, all right? Don't make it about something that it's not. If you want to talk about how the church is doing, come to the business meeting, all right? I'll talk to you all night long about it. Chuckle, all right? Talk to you, we'll go through the sheets, we'll go through all the stuff. You can ask about that stuff anytime. That's not what we're talking about today. Not really. All right? So, a lot of people have an image in their mind about what generosity looks like. And for some of you, you think generous, you're like, oh, Oprah. Oprah's really generous. You think about somebody that's got their name on the side of a building with the middle initial in it, right? I don't know what it is about that, but the more money you give, they make sure that they get the middle initial in. It's the Sarah L. Crodwalker School of, Institute for something or other. Letters and big names. I probably wouldn't put some of these names on the side of a building. I'd be like, that doesn't really roll off the tongue. Maybe we could have called it, the JL something or other. But that's kind of how it's done. That's the way that our culture has gotten used to the idea. But today, what I'm finding, what I see in myself even, is that people really aren't all that impressed by that kind of generosity. Someone with $1 bazillion, somebody with $100 million fortune swoops in and they give $15 million to build the thing. There's something about that doesn't impress us as much. Because you and I, we all know, that didn't even put a dent. That didn't cost them anything. Their lives aren't going to change materially. You go into a hospital or the entryway of some rec center or something like that. You see a plaque on the wall, and of course, the biggest name is the one who gives the most at the top. Sarah L. Crodwalker at the top, and below, to signify that there were others who contributed in slightly smaller lettering and a big blob of names. Those guys all gave about $1,000, but the one at the top gave $300,000. So, that's kind of our version of generosity that we're used to. But people up and coming actually are not all that impressed. In fact, I see it in myself, I'm looking for something more like the kind of generosity that Jesus spoke about. In Luke 12, we're getting right into the Bible right away. Luke 12, first verse, we find Jesus in front of the temple grounds, in front of the area where people would come in and give, and people would tithe, and people would give gifts. And in front of the temple, every single week, there would be these big bronze, basically urns, giant urn can things with a top, and they'd have like a little slot at the top, and people would come in. And of course, people, when they gave their tithe or gave special gifts to particular offerings, like for widows or for kids who orphaned or something like that, they'd come in and they'd pull out their money sack, and all of the money was, of course, in coinage, because That's how they did it. And your coinage would be made of silver or gold or copper, some sort of precious metal. And the heavier it was, the more valuable it was, because it was based on the value of the metal. And so people would come in and put their stuff in the pots, and that's what's happening as Jesus is sitting in front of the temple with his guys. It says, Luke says, as Jesus looked up, he saw the rich putting their gifts into the temple treasury. He also saw a poor widow put in 2 very small copper coins. Truly, I tell you, he said, this poor widow has put in more than all the others. So they're sitting there and watching things happen, and you wouldn't know this from just reading, but a little bit of history would tell you this. Sometimes they would have basically like a praise team, like a worship band on trumpets or something like that. And the more sound that came out of that can, people would get more excited. They're giving more. They're giving more to the treasury. They're giving more for the widows or whatever. And sometimes they blow the trumpets. They make a big deal. I'm sorry, my trumpet's not very good. And in the midst of all of that, a widow who in those times would have had a very difficult time earning a living, period, is making her way up. Nobody's paying any attention. And she pulls out 2, he says, very small copper coins. Probably the least valuable kind of coin. Puts them in the thing, and Jesus says, she's given more than all the others put together. You're like, what? He says, all these people, take note, he says, all these people gave their gifts out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in all she had to live on. That's all he says. They've given out of their extra. They've given out of that line past what you need, past what you can use, and then there's even more. They're rich. That's what rich is. You have more than what you need. And they've given out of that spot, over the line. They've given out of the extra. It's not going to affect their lives. It's not going to impact their vacations. It's not going to do any damage. They're not going to have to go home and rethink, well, where am I going to shop? From Aldi's or from Hannaford's? Am I going to shop from Sam's Club, or am I going to just, go out to Tops? It's not going to impact anything. But she has made a very powerful statement. She has gone to give a gift. It doesn't say tithe, it just says to give a gift. I don't know who the recipient was. I don't know what situation they're in. But whatever their situation was in her heart, she made this little statement. She said, I have a little, but they have none, so I'll share my little. There's something powerful in that. There's something powerful that says, you are as valuable as I am. That's what it means. I value you on par with myself, with my own interests, with my own needs. Jesus says, she has given. She is generous. I mean, really generous. Now, it doesn't say all the people given the other things, all the other amounts, the rich people coming through. It doesn't say that it was bad that they gave. It doesn't even say that it's not a good thing, but he steps back and says, no, this lady has given more. And just a snapshot, you realize generosity really isn't about the quantity given. It isn't about, that big 4x8 sheet. I don't know why they print these things, but apparently sometimes the bank runs out of regular printer paper and they have to print their checks on a 4x8 cardboard sheet. You know what I'm talking about? Like it just went down to Lowe's and got a piece of plywood, and it's enormous, like Publishers Clearinghouse, And of course, we all know why they do that. It's just make a big deal. Like, look, we're going to take a picture. But she's given more. She's given more. And right away, we can see one very, very powerful truth. And it's impacted your lives at some point, whether you realize it or not. And it's this, that generosity costs you something. Generosity costs you something, the way that Jesus sees it. There's something that you won't be doing. There's somewhere you won't go. There's always something that's cost when you get to that level of generosity. That's when generosity gets heavy. And that is when generosity impacts people the most. You think, I've got to have $10 million to really make an impact. I've got to throw $50 million at something to glorify Jesus. And the truth is, generosity is an equal opportunity employer. You can have almost nothing. You can have almost everything. You can still be generous either way. You're not at a disadvantage because you didn't have a lot. You can still be generous. You're not at a disadvantage because you have a lot, because you can still be generous. God is interested equally in all people being generous. And like I said, if you've ever been on the other side of that, you actually can see the power. Different times, people have been generous to me. And I don't mean to compare anybody. I just remember certain stories better than others. I remember one time, my friend who, he was retired at the time, but he kind of took me under his wing. He was a mentor to me at a time when I was kind of like, maybe I have faith, maybe I don't, but maybe I do have faith, but maybe I'll do it later. I was wish-washy about it, right? I had things, stuff I was interested in. And when I graduated from school, I stopped by his house. He had a present for me. So I'm like, there's a card on the table. He's going to give me a card on the table. And then he hands me a set of keys. I'm like, what? Why are you giving me? This is suspicious. This is suspicious. Because I knew him. He was a generous guy. He says, Jim, he goes, you got to come out in the garage and see this car I got. I'm like, really? Okay. He said, yeah, you got to come out. You got to come out and see this car. I like it. He goes, it was a used Cadillac. Used Cadillac. Oh, he goes, you get in the car, get out of the garage. He goes, Jim, he goes, you got to step on it. Step on it. I'm like, okay. Come on, dude. You're kind of past the age of stepping on it, aren't you? He's like, no, Jim, you got to step on it. Of course, this isn't really my thing. Okay, whatever. So I'm like, all right, step on it. That 5-liter Cadillac engine picks up, the front of the car, just like, whoa, that thing had power. Like, wow, who knew that old people need this much horsepower, And I'm like, that thing went. It was amazing. And it was great, It's fun. I love cars. I work on cars. He worked on cars. We had a thing. It was a brotherhood, So we go on a ride, come back. Isn't that smooth, Jim? Man, is the car you have that smooth? I'm like, no, it's probably not. It's probably not that smooth. Man, Jim, isn't that good on the road? Man, feel the suspension. I'm like, yeah, it's good. Look at the interior of this car. It was immaculate leather. It was wonderful. And he goes, Jim, I want you to have this car. Congratulations on graduating. And I thought, what is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? He was almost 70, and he was still working. He was really working. He wasn't like, just managing. Not that management isn't work, because it is, but for his age and for his condition and being a diabetic and all that stuff, he was out there. He was painting boats. He was shrink wrapping things. He was doing all the body work. He was working on the motors and stuff. I'm just like, dude, you can't afford to give me this car. He decided otherwise. And things like that, they impact you more than just, some person coming along and giving you something. Well, I wasn't even using it anyway, so, not going to affect me. I knew it would impact him. I knew him doing that was going to make things tight. He had to drive 45 minutes to Clayton every day in the winter, all winter long. I knew. And it stuck with me. It was powerful. I've had lots of people be generous with me, but that was one of those moments that just sticks out in my mind. I couldn't believe that. You can't afford this. And I kept that car and I drove that thing for like, I don't know how long, 5, 6, 7 years. And it was better than my car. It was. I hate to admit it, but it was. Went to job interviews out of state. I mean, I did all kinds of things. And yes, I did sometimes drive very fast. Passing people in a Cadillac. Those things stand out when it happens. When it happens. So the question is this. Everybody respects generosity. Everybody admires it. I mean, church people, not church people, everybody respects it. I mean, when you listen to the news at night and they have one of those feel-good stories, it's usually about somebody that just gave all of something. They sold their cars and they gave it to somebody, or they donated their thing or whatever. I mean, everybody respects generosity. But and maybe you notice this too, as I go on and I go on and I go on, I hear fewer and fewer and fewer stories of these crazy people who give at a level that actually impacts their standard of living. Why? And what I'm learning is there's sort of a forgotten discipline, a forgotten trait. I don't know, it could be something else, but it's kind of been lost. And it's something that Paul talks about. There's a spiritual truth with regard to how we actually run our lives, and it comes out in a moment when he is asking others to be generous. And I'm going to take you to 1 Corinthians chapter 16. This is Paul writing to a pretty new, up-and-coming church movement in the city of Corinth in Greece. And he's actually springboarding off of something that they had wanted to do and did do quite a while back. They had actually taken up a collection and offered it to him to use for himself or whoever else that he might benefit. I mean, he comes into contact with all kinds of people and all kinds of circumstances. Here, we want to help. And he knew it would be a little bit tricky for them. He knew that they themselves didn't have oodles of wealth, but he accepted it because he believed the heart of it was right, that Jesus was doing something in them. And so he comes back, and now he's got something real that they can give to. And it's the Christians in Jerusalem who are being persecuted. And he writes to tell them, look, these guys are in bad shape. I mean, they've had their businesses taken from them. They've been put in jail. Families have been separated. People are having trouble having enough to eat because of the way the culture is rejecting them and it's against them. And so I'm going to come and take a collection at some point. The thing is, he never quite knew when it would be. Could be months, could be a year, till I get there. And this is what he tells them. Listen to this. He says, about the collection for the Lord's people, do what I told the Galatian churches to do. So this isn't something that was just for them. This is something he tells church people all over the place. He says, do what I told the Galatian churches to do. On the first day of every week, each one of you should set aside a sum of money in keeping with your income, okay, in proportion to what you have coming in, saving it up, so that when I come, no collections will have to be made. Then when I arrive, I will give letters of introduction to the men that you approve and send them with your gift to Jerusalem. So this is a transparent operation. I'm asking you way ahead of time, would you be generous with these people when the opportunity comes up? And I don't know exactly when the opportunity will be, but it is coming. There will be this opportunity. And what I believe Paul is saying in a very frank, very, very practical way is you actually really need a plan to be generous. You actually have to have a plan. Right? And you can be generous without a plan. You can just kind of react to things as you go. But the thing is, you can only be generous occasionally. You could be generous for a little while and then it's going to stop. Without a plan, it doesn't keep going. Why? This is a simple spiritual, financial, life truth I'm going to share with you. You actually already know it. And it's this. the something that generosity costs plans to fight back. Did you know that? It actually has a plan itself. You're like, what? You're nuts, dude. Get off the stage. No, it has a plan. I know it has a plan. It has a plan ready if you don't have a plan. Because honestly, money and time, by the way, time can also be a way that we use generosity. Because time is money, money is time, it takes time to get money. Sometimes money buys you time. Is really very similar. Time and money are like a hot potato. You get the hot potato, about as soon as you got the hot potato, you're looking for the next place to send it. And that's how it is with time and money. As soon as you get a little bit of time, as soon as you get a little bit of money, what's the old saying? It's burning a hole in my pocket. What can I do with this? What can I get with this? And get this, the opportunities that you have to glorify God with the impact of giving and loving in that way, they're not that loud. They're not that proud. They're not that persistent. They don't nag at you. They don't send you emails. Most of the time, they don't send you emails. They don't come and knock on your door every day. Remember, there's going to be an opportunity to be generous. It's coming up sometime in the next year and a half. It's going to be important. They don't do that. But I'm telling you, the some things that generosity is going to cost definitely have a plan. And you have talked with them on the phone. You have emailed with them. I guarantee there's somebody in the time that I have been talking with you that has, look, Runnings MasterCard wants me to enroll. Look, ChristianBook.com wants me to buy some books. Look, I can subscribe to the something or other newsletter, okay, for $5.99 a month for the first 3 months and get the last part of the year for a slightly less rate, okay? There are always people out there who have the perfect plan for what to do with your resources. In fact, large companies don't get to be large without knowing exactly how a person like yourself can afford to pay for the thing that they have for you. It's true. I went to a mechanic one time. It's just a franchise, Nothing against working in the franchise, but that's how the business is set up. I go to the counter and they're like, well, we really recommend that you buy 4 brand new tires together, not 2. They gave me all the reasons, and plus some shocks. You really need some shocks on that thing. Now, it wasn't that I didn't believe that would be good. But I was like, I think I'm going to go with 2 on the rear because it's 4-wheel drive or whatever, and you can do that. And I'm not going to do that. It's just really not in my budget right now. No offense, just not my budget. And he was quick on the draw. He said, well, I can set you up a card right now, and we can put the full amount on the card, and then you have the rest of the year to pay it off. I mean, he didn't even pause. It was just like, whew, that was a reflex. I was like, no. I don't think you understood. No, I actually need the money that I could put there to go toward another thing that I've already decided that it goes toward. And then that extra money isn't just going to magically appear by the end of the year. So no, that's actually not what I'm going to do, but thank you anyway. It's the same everywhere you go. There are people all over, the somebodies, they're going to fight for that plan that they have made for you. And there's some glory in there that they wouldn't mind having for themselves and sharing amongst their coworkers. Nothing against working and being in business and having a job. I think you should do those things. But if you're not in charge of your own plan, I'm telling you, people are working on a plan every single day for you. You want to buy some stuff on Amazon? Well, it's a little bit more than what I have right now. Well, get the card. Put it on the card. Well, I don't know how to do that. Let us help you. It's in 3 simple, easy steps. 12 easy installments. Lady calls me because I made the mistake of searching a cruise one time, and of course, what do? You can't find any info unless you give them a phone number. No way, can't give you a quote, got to have a phone number. They're going to call me. They've been calling me every week for like a year and a half. Hello, this is Ashley from Norwegian Cruise. I can almost give you her extension number from memory. And they don't even wait for you to hesitate. They're like, and we have 6 easy ways that you can pay. We have Amazon, we have PushPay, we have Apple Pay, we have this, that, the other thing. You can take out the Norwegian Cruise card, you can get the cruise credit, you can do all that. Leave me alone. Tempting me, get thee behind me, Satan. Don't say that to real people, please. Something has a plan. All of the somethings have a plan if they're any good. And they will remind you, they will be very courteous, they will be very polite, they'll be very professional. They can wait. Oh, you're not sure? We'll call you back later. Let me call you in a week. See how you're doing. In Paul's day, they didn't email you, they came to your door. Knock, knock, knock. I got all these oranges. You want to buy some? I mean, there's just no end to the places and the somethings that wouldn't mind access to your resources, and they aren't worried about your plan. The only person that can hold to that is you. It's you. If you approach life without a plan for what's important, what you're going to prioritize, it just doesn't happen. Same today as it was back then. Paul knew. You set it aside, you set it aside, you set it aside. You've got to give it a spot in your life, a box or an envelope or something, because just the same then as it is now, money and time just have a way of they're looking for somewhere to go all the time. And then you get to the end and you know this collection is coming and here's Paul, and you're like, oh yes, I'm so moved, I want to give. And you're like, well, I guess I've only got what's in my wallet, and it's $10, so I'm going to give $10. But all this time, you could have prioritized your life and set it up that way so that when there's an opportunity, you're not feeling guilty or shamed, or you're like, wow, oh, I feel so bad. This is something that really speaks to me. I can't do anything about it, though. Paul's idea of a plan makes perfect sense for today's culture. Think about all of the things that mean something spiritually, like ministries, like missionaries. Some of you sponsor missionaries just individually. Now, I know obviously our church has missionaries that we sponsor as a group, as a community, but some of you just, I want to go above and beyond a little bit, or I have a certain missionary that I really believe in the stuff, we're friends, that's great. So you do that out of pocket, and nobody knows about it, and that's how it should be. But all of the ministries that make impact, almost all of them, at some point, they're using resources. They're pooling resources together to do these things. And it only happens when people have a consistent plan that they have to do it. We have a guy we sponsor. Some of you sponsor the same guy, I think, and. We just set it up on an automatic thing. It's a certain number of bucks every month, comes out same date. If I didn't have that, and if I didn't set that up that way, I'm not sure if it would always happen. Honestly, some of you are serious givers toward the church, and you rely on the church as a group to come together and make decisions about things that, quite frankly, you don't have the personal time to spend researching and doing all that stuff, so you elect people and you trust people to be your representatives to make those decisions. That's what our church council does. That's what our deacons do. Our deacons, by the way, are amazing individuals. Our deacons, I've always loved this about the church. In this particular church, the deacons have a fund that they have. We siphon off a percentage of all of the giving that comes into this church. I think it's a 12 or somewhere between 12 and 13%. Everything that comes in goes in the deacons fund. And the deacons have some decisions. They certainly do fund some missionaries through their funds, but honestly, a lot of what they do is they give to people. people who approach us, sometimes we're just keeping our eyes peeled. And somebody could use a little extra blessing right now. They're going through something, going through cancer, got medical bills, going through an accident, going through something. Let's just make a little glory for the Lord, make an impact, and just surprise them. Boom, here. And what's cool is more than one thing. They're going, but it's not like it's their money. It's not like they're there to get glory for themselves. They can't. Because if you ask them, who gave the money that went into this? They're like, I don't know. Bunch of Jesus people. Jesus loves you. A bunch of Jesus people. So it wasn't you? Not really. And they don't know. And we're pretty careful. We don't tell anybody anything they don't need to know. We have, a bookkeeper and we audit and all that stuff, but, glory's not for them. Glory's not for you. The way that's done, it's just for Jesus. That's the only way it can be. And there are many, many opportunities that we have as a church community, as individuals who are part of that church community, to be generous. It's not always about giving directly to your church and trusting, I understand how important that is. I mean, honestly, we wouldn't be doing this. I mean, we just wouldn't if there weren't people who consistently made a plan to give and just were consistent, even when it hurts a little bit, even when I really would like a little extra to do that, but they do it. They just keep giving. They just keep giving, and that's why we can do things like this. But there are also so many opportunities that you have as a human to another human, as a human to another family, as a small group. Our small groups are often looking for a project to bless somebody with, to reach into the community. That's a big part of where we're headed with small groups. Groups do something. Groups are doing things. Okay, we don't just read and talk and meet, but we're looking to reach our hands into the community. And so oftentimes groups will come together and they'll say, there's a somebody or a something, an opportunity, we're going to bless that person. So they take a month or something, collect all the money they can in that time and say, okay, boom, slam you with generosity, boom. Some of you may even have been hit by the generosity bus from one of those groups. I don't know. Only possible with a plan. Only possible at this level with a plan. Only possible with a plan. What am I telling you to do? Write me an enormous check. No. I'm telling you, some point in your life, whether you have a budget, you don't have a budget, whether you have a lot of income, whether you don't have a lot of income, I'm actually telling you, I think, for the cause of Christ, that you should make a plan for some amount. Start with just some amount. And like Paul said, in keeping with your income, if you make $10,000 a year, don't plan to give away $7,000, okay? That's not going to work out, all right? And you won't keep up your generosity for very long. You have to do some work in order to do this. You're going to have some conversations with, money conversations are great for marriages. Oh, they're so good. Man, if you got marriage problems, I think 80% of the time I can fix your problems by sending you home to talk about your money together. It's wonderful. Because you actually have to talk about what you care about, what means something, what's your priority. You have to do it. Side note, make an appointment. But make a plan. Make a plan. The Old Testament people were commanded by God to give what they called a tithe. A tithe is just a strange word that meant a tenth. And what it was a vehicle for them that they could plan on so that every time they had something come in for the week or for the month or in sheep or goats or strawberries or whatever it was, they said, okay, the first tenth goes to God. And so they give that to the temple, and that provided for the people who were doing special jobs that God had asked them to do because they weren't going to be allowed to own land and go out and do other jobs and things. And so we're going to provide for them in this way. And it was like clockwork, the first tenth, the first tenth, the first tenth. But actually, Christianity frees us to go beyond the legalistic, that goes beyond a specific number that you have to be holy or not. Christianity frees you to be generous with everybody and to be personally convicted by the Lord about what you should be doing. Honestly, there are people who are personally convicted by the Lord. They actually have certain specific projects or things, or they're supposed to be paying for somebody's education to be a blessing, or they're supposed to be fixing somebody's car, and they set aside a certain amount of money. I don't know what it is to them. Maybe it could be 40% or something, you know, and to us it's like 40%. Oh my goodness. To them it's priority. To them, it's conviction. To them, it's personal. So I know some people, our treasurer is probably very unhappy with me right now. I think tithing is great. I think tithing is like the first step in setting your life in order financially. Honestly, it's a brilliant first step. But the truth is, you may not even have the faith for that at this moment. You're just looking for like a half a step or a baby step that you could take in order to start experiencing what it's like to be able to be generous and all that. So what I tell people is just start with a percentage. I don't even tell you what it is. Start with 2%. Whatever. But when you start with something and make it consistent, what happens is you start to see the power of what that can do. And then suddenly what you're doing is you're looking around for opportunities. You're not waiting to react to an opportunity. You're a little bit more like Paul, where you're saying, I'm saving up a little bit, or I know that I'm putting this, amount into the church. And then when you're doing that, you're saying, I'm looking for where that investment can do the most. So suddenly, people who start giving to the church in a methodical, consistent way, you know what they do? They start looking around and saying, hey, do the deacons know that such and such is going through a thing? Because where your dollars are, there your heart will be also. See? And as you do this in your personal life, you go beyond giving to the church, you look for things, you look for missionaries or some such, all right? You start looking for, how can I be more of a blessing? How could I encourage these people? You're just so in there, you're owning it, you're invested. It changes your life. It really does. It changes your outlook. It changes your focus. Jesus said, where your treasure goes, where your treasure is, that's where your heart will end up too. People's hearts are always lined up with where they put their resources. Make a plan. Again, my treasurer is going to be very unhappy with me. You're like, I don't quite trust this guy. You know what? Make a plan, give somebody else's church. I said that. I'm serious. I have that much faith that it will change your life. It is more important to me to have life change than it is to have stuff coming in and making sure the books are balanced. I'm honest about that. And if this place closed down, we didn't meet anymore, couldn't turn the heat on, couldn't pay Pastor James, I don't know what we'd do. We'd all Zoom together or something. I don't know, okay? We'd figure it out. But I tell you what, I would never tell you to stop the generosity. I would never tell you to shut the generosity off, because that's where life change happens. It happens for the people, and it happens for you. It happens for you. Oh man, I'm so discouraged. I feel bad. I'm so ashamed. Make a plan. Pick a percent and start setting that percent somewhere. If it's into the church, great. Thank you for your generosity. If it's for a missionary, if it's for a neighbor that you've noticed could really use a blessing or a pick-me-up or somebody that's going through something, then great. But do it. Be consistent and set it and send it. Send it. Because Jesus is going to get glory. Somebody's always going to be getting glory where your resources go. But giving is where it happens for Jesus. There's always going to be a CEO somewhere getting some glory. That guy for Spectrum Cable on the phone is going to be getting some glory. Signed another one. The guy who trained the guy who called you is going to get some glory. It's Jesus that you want to get the glory. What hangs in the balance? Glory to God. Influence for Christ. It's the power of generosity. I'm going to pray. I hope you pray with me, if you're not too annoyed at this point. Father, I pray that you would open our hearts, all of our hearts today, not for anybody's glory today, not for one single person's glory, for no other purpose than for you to reach into our heart and rearrange things. Disciple us. Set goals and places. Put our desire to help into action. Put intentionality behind it. Give us a signal. Give us a nudge. You could do this. Or I would ask you to do this. Or bring those convictions that we have about helping to mind. God, we want you to get glory. We want you to get glory. Send your message of love and value through our actions in this community. Influence the hearts and minds of these people. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. If I don't see you at a group, I will see you next week. I hope that you get into a group. I hope that you're thinking about volunteering. I hope that you're thinking about doing all kinds of things, but I hope that you actually make it to some fellowship with somebody this week.